what has been created next on the wall, which is a timeline of science fiction we created for this event. It's covering about 4,000 years. I'm not going to go through all the details, otherwise we will need about 2 or 3 days. But I'm going to highlight the main period and how was it each period was related to science fiction. So we started, I divide the period, and I'm presenting on the first slide 2 periods, very, very old period for us, which is basically the ancient time. We started before our era, and medieval. Ancient time, I went back to about 2,000, minus 2,000 years compared to our currency. And I found holy books, holy stories, mythical, which were connected to science fiction, especially in the Mesopotamia, which was the Byzance Middle East area, as well as Egypt and also India. Lot of texts in India at that time refer to cosmos, magics, and most of the time, all this type of information we could find out were connected to myth. Thank you. To myth. Oh, I don't like that. So it's what we call the speculative cosmology and the myth as a world building at that time. Of course, we have also during this period the Greek and the Roman empires, who would generate a lot of philosophers and thinkers, authors. We talk about Platon with the Republic, that could be considered as a utopian science fiction book originally. An amazing discovery I would like to share with you was done in 1901 during a dive session in Greece. They found what we call the Antikythera mechanisms, which is a very old machines built at that time. And we expect this to be Greek originally. And this machine was a representation of the cosmos, mechanical representation of the cosmos. Currently, we have not yet finalized, I think they've discovered only 30% of the total mechanism function. But this is amazing compared to the period of time it was built. I mean, we are talking about maybe minus thousands, about 3,000 years ago. And it was discovered by divers when they were looking for sponges underwater. Also in China, someone very important, Zheng Heng, who has been created the first seismist topology device to potentially record all the shaking of the earth during an earthquake, was created at that time by this Chinese. The only thing he could not calculate was the amplitude of, so he did not have the scale for monitoring, but the location and the fact that the earth was moving, yes. Medieval time, we finished the ancient, we start the medieval time in 4,500 of our era, which is the collapse of the empire, Roman Empire. And during this period, from 475 to 1,350, I would say it's traditionally considered that we get into an obscure type of era and time frame. However, there are a couple of interesting things. In Japan, during this period, we start to see the first, you call this the emaki picture, the structural picture of the Japanese traditional culture, which to me is the father of what we call the manga and all these traditional mangas we see originally. That can be related now to this emaki type of communication in Japan. We have also, of course, the 1001 Nights, epic stories created, which also related in a lot of aspects to science fiction. In the UK, we have a crazy monk who wanted to fly. He was absolutely I would say, completely bananas about flying, and he created some wings at that time, and he jumped himself out of a tower. He crashed. So it's not really called a flight. He just crashed with his wings, and he broke both legs. This was Helmer of Malmesbury, sorry. And also in the Middle East, Mesopotamia and so on, we have this mechanical automata, which is Al-Jazari, who has been one of the first to create an automate. And the first one he created was for serving drinks. That was but the technology at that time was already there for these guys to be able to create this type of automatic device. And of course, we cannot stop this period without talking about the Divine Comedy of Dante, the Italian, very famous, where he's explaining, he's detailing a cosmic journey through hell, purgatory, and paradise, which also to me are considered as premises of science fiction. Then after the medieval, we switched to Renaissance, which was much more enthusiastic period of time, where we start to have all the big discoveries in the world. People are starting to travel. There are discovery of America, India, from Europe, mostly from Europe and Portugal and Spain. And this is the startup of all this period. So it has changed the mind of people automatically. So suddenly people are much more open to the unknown, and they try to imagine how people are living and so on and so on. So it's a complete change in terms of mindset. We shift towards the empirical inquiry also. We less rely on unexplained things. We want to start understanding things. And it is important because the two later periods are going to be the confirmation of this trend. One of the big inventions at that time for all science fiction fans and readers is the printing press created by Gutenberg, the German inventor. And it was a change of communication at that time for the entire world. We started printing books. So it was a big information explosion. So after this period of Renaissance, we switch to what we call a Baroque, which is a very small period of time, but essential in terms of discovery and scientific revolution. We talk about 1600 to 1687. When you have, at this time, you start to have Galileo with this improvement on telescope, who suddenly switch the way of our position in the universe. Galileo was one of the first to promote and validate what Copernicus did a couple of years earlier. That means the universe, the Earth is not the central point of the universe. The sun is in our galaxy. We turn around the sun. Before, everybody believed that the sun was turning around the Earth. So we went on geocentric to heliocentric mindset. And that was the key aspect. They changed completely the aspect of, we are not the center of the world. And in this type of way of thinking, it has changed also the way of writing things. And we'll see through Kepler, we see also through a guy very well known, not for what he did, but because he's a character in a very important novel. He's a French guy, nobody's perfect. It's called Cyrano de Bergerac. Very famous character, but it is actually a real person. And this person wrote one of the first science fiction story, which was called The States and Empires of the Sun. And it is very, very interesting because you have a space travel, you have a rocket going to and we are talking about 1600. So that's very, very amazing. And then at the end of this period, one of the key fundamental discovery was in 1687, Isaac Newton, with automatically the classical physics mentor, who is a founder of classical physics, which is going to be developed in all science fiction medias, whatever we talk, the books, the movies, and so on, later on, because they are going to use what Isaac Newton put on the paper at that time, and validated as this Principia of Mathematica. I hope it's okay, lah. It's not too boring for you. I'm going to do it quick, because 4,000 years, you have to. We switch to Enlightenment, which is also a very French type of period, because a lot of philosophers and artists were authors, and at that particular time were coming from France. We had this new wave of thinking, which puts people, the individual people first, and all the science was based on experiment. We were not tracking on, guessing stuff and so on. Everything has to be automatically validated by experience, empirical. What do we have during this period, which is 1687 and 1815? We have Benjamin Franklin, who validated that electricity was a natural parameter, which is important, electricity, when he did this trial with a kite, and then he put a keys on a kite, and then suddenly it was struck during a storm, and he could prove that electricity was a natural factor. We have also, again, I'm sorry because I don't want to promote France too much, but it's a fact, the first fly, which was done in 1783 in a balloon. That was the first time human could fly. So actually they did 3 tests during this 1783. They flew the balloon without anybody because they were not really sure it was going to work. And they flew the balloon about, 15, 20 minutes. Then they put some animals in the balloon. They put a rooster, they put a goat. Why? That's a big question. Rooster, they say, cannot fly, so he will stay in the balloon. In September, they put the animals, no problem. And in the November of that year, they put 2 guys, and the guys flew all over Paris during 25 minutes. That was the first time a human being really fly. And they did that in front of the King, Louis XVI, at that time. And also we have, for this period, Kant, the German specialist Kant, which was, he was the first to describe the galaxy formation. Then, after this period, it's very delicate, periods are not stopping on a very specific year, but at the end of this period and the beginning of the next period, we start to have what we call the Industrial Revolution. So machines are going to be set up. It started in the UK, and we have a complete transformation of the economy and the society, our social, human, and so on. And this is going to reflect the next century, which is going to be the industrial. And when we start talking about industrialization, which is 1815-19, this is the birth of science fiction. We can say this is a period where science fiction started, the science fiction we know today. The first novel was Frankenstein from Mary Shelley in 1818. We have big authors like H.G. Wells. Everybody should know H.G. Wells. I mean, Invisible Man, The Time Machine, and so on. Jules Verne, another French guy. Now you have the choice about 55 novels, all science fiction. And at the end of the period, in 1895, we have the creation of a very important media, which is going to be the cinematograph. It was the first movie projected to public, shoot. It was done in France, in Lyon, by the Lumière brothers, and this was the startup of the cinema as we know it today. After you had a huge collection of development during the first 60 years earlier, from the first photography, which was also a French guy who did the first photograph in Paris. Then you have many developments done during 60 years approximately to reach the level in 1895 to have the first movie ever made and screened to people. And the Lumière brothers created a device which was on quality practically unbeatable, and not only the camera was able to shoot to record, we were able to edit, and they were able to project the movie. So they shoot the movie on March 19, and they projected to public on the 23rd, the same month. And that was a revolution, because Edison used to have this kinescope developed in the US, but it was a single user. You just put your head in the device and you were watching a little bit of a movie. Quality was not the same. It was like VHS versus CD compared to the Lumiere brothers. And the Lumiere brothers, the big addition was can be projected to public. So they are the one who created what we call the cinema. That's why it's called cinemascope and so on. That's cinematograph. You have cinema originally. And that's for closing the end of the Industrial Revolution. And then we start to get into the 20th century. And we start right away on the 20th century in 1902. Another very important date in science fiction, because this is the first science fiction movie ever made. Simple. Yep. Now. So the guy who made the movie is called George Méliès. I had the opportunity for preparing this particular presentation and the timeline. I had the opportunity and the chance to talk to his great-granddaughter, who provided me with an original copy of the movie. I'm showing it here, with the original scope from 1902. This is apparently not often, so if you have the opportunity, we will try to show it several times over the weekend, because it's a piece of jewelry, and it's amazing to see the level of sophistication, special effects, this guy invented in 1902. This is an absolute delight. The guy was a magician originally, so he used this magic trick, and he said, when he discovered that cinema was existing or being developed, he said, this is the tool I need to make, and he created the first science fiction movie. It was great. Then, all this period from 1900 up to, I would say, the beginning of the Second World War was bookmarked with very important things. We have in 27 another iconic movie made by an Austrian director, Fritz Lang, which is Metropolis, which is a very long film. It's 2 hours, 30 minutes, amazing technology, and we see the development done between the 1902 and the 1927, the gap, only 20 years almost, but a revolution in terms of technology. We have in the US also amazing stories created by Hugo Gernsback, which is a fundamental publisher of science fiction in the US, which is going to be a key boom. That was in 26. Then in 35, we have the DC Comics creation, which is also very important because we start to have the famous superheroes, Superman, Batman, and so on and so on. All the details are over there, because I'm not... 39, we have the competition coming in 1939 with Marvels. So we have the other side with Captain America, which was created, which is interesting because it was created during the period of the war. So people were thinking, oh, we need superhero to boost morale and so on during the war. So there is always connection. And just before the war, we have also a very important discovery, which was Turing, the Turing machine, the UK guy, who decided to get into a theological computer. He was the creator of this. I think I have to stop now. Hello? I stop? Huh? Okay. So if you want to have more details, please look at the timeline. You have everything over there. I'm sorry because I am short. You're sure I cannot do longer?
How much more time do you need? Be done in 2-3 minutes?
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. So it's not finished yet. So. So thank you so much. After the war, we had The big three authors starting, which is Einstein, Orwell, Asimov, who created lot of novels. A very important movie I would like to highlight is Godzilla in Japan in '54, because it's related to nuclear. There is a big connection because between the end of the Second World War and the nuclear Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and so on, and Godzilla. So the influence of the real world on science fiction. Also, in '56, the first use of artificial intelligence. Mr. McCarthy was the first to use artificial intelligence. He was a computer scientist. So '56, it's not from yesterday. And also on the TV is becoming more and more important for showing science fiction. We have the startup of Twilight Zone, very important, by Serling in '59. We get into the 60s and 70s, which is going to be a massive period for science fiction, where we have some of the most iconic movies made during this period of time. I would like to highlight one author, which is Pierre Boulle, a French guy, who wrote only 2 novels in his life, The Bridge Over the River Kwai and The Planet of the Apes. The guy did only 2 books, and these books make 2 iconic movies. It was in '63. We have also Dune in '65 written, and the masterpiece 2001: A Space Oddity in '68, which we show it yesterday here, and personal authors, because it's a personal timeline. It's Andromeda from Michael Crichton. I think, I don't know if we say Crichton or Crichton, but for me, it's one of the most interesting science fiction authors of the current. He died not long time ago, but I read basically all his novels. It's very interesting, and he is the one who wrote Jurassic Park. Other movies I would like to highlight, which were quite important at the end of the '70s, were Alien. Also, we started to have the horror science fiction, which is a masterpiece, and this Australian movie from George Miller, Mad Max, which was also very low budget, not much money, but extremely well done, and it was like a movie science fiction anticipation of the potential future of the Earth. Then in the '80s, we have what we call the post-Cold War period, and we start to have a lot of cyber movies being produced, like Tron, Terminator, Blade Runner, all this. And also the first very popular Japanese manga, Akira, in '88. As well as in '95, Ghost in the Shell. And this period finished with Matrix. I cannot go through all the movies because there are a huge list, but these are the most iconic. And then we get into AI for the next period from 2000 up to now. We have different period where I would say, we close now, I would say that the period currently, we see more and more movies, science fiction movies connected to environment. That's why they remake Dune, because Dune was basically could be considered as on climate environment. It's one of the major issues in the movies, as well as there is a couple of other recently. I would like to highlight one which is called Vesper, which is also very, very interesting about ecology. That's it. I close now because otherwise I'm going to be killed and the force is not really with me. Thank you so much. Terima kasih banyak.